I guess this is just a roundabout way of saying that like having a Tensorian is going to be key to kind of, getting your kind of bonuses and boosts in season three.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Today we are here with Sting from Tensor. This is episode 1 of The Wave. We're excited to bring you some quality content here. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Sting. I'm currently the head of trading and I manage liquidity over at Tensor. So anything to do with, markets, trading, business, all of that kind of stuff. Shake and I kind of handle all of that together. So yeah, that's my role on the team.
Cool. And then we also have our co-host Wookie here today. So go ahead and introduce yourself as well.
It's a pleasure. I'm Wookie. I'm Mohammed's brother. Been in the space for a while, and I'm super happy to be here. Really excited to be co-hosting episode 1 with Sting. Huge fan of what you guys are building at Tensor, and without further ado, let's jump into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get started. So Sting, we're just gonna, like we said, we're gonna keep it super conversational here. Let's just start off with the basic information. What exactly do you have going on right now at Tensor? What's the story? Give us the rundown.
Yeah. So I guess I can take it from the beginning. So when we started Tensor, Richard and Ilya, the two founders, they were basically just coding away, and they basically wanted to find a cool project that they could build together. So the first thing that they did was Tensor.so, our Oracle product. So we actually built an NFT pricing Oracle for, any platforms that wanted to build lending, wanted to build futures products, anything like that. So anything that you actually needed a Oracle price, similar to what like Pith or other companies like that provide for other DEXs on chain. So quickly they found, a really cool product. They were able to build it out. They won a prize in the hackathon, but they quickly found that there was no real customers for that. So Fract was the first and the only customer for that product. So I think that's kind of like the funny story there. So it was like they quickly found out that they needed to pivot and kind of reinvent or rethink of what Tensor was going to be. And so from there, we kind of moved to a market aggregator. So currently, Tensor operates in three fashions. So we are currently a market aggregator. We are an AMM, so we offer advanced order types, buy-side curves, sell-side curves, market-making orders, and we also are a full marketplace. So anything that you can do on an OpenSea or a Blur, you can also do on our marketplace as well. So that's currently how Tensor sits and how it kind of evolved into what it is today.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Has the team always been the same since inception, or has it been evolving and adapting over time?
So currently, we have actually 5 of us now. So there's 3 engineers. There's Ilmoy, there's Richard, and there's Avocado. And then on the business side, there's me and Shake. So basically, what happened is when they launched the first product, they were able to get to the point of where they didn't actually need any funding. They were doing it purely off hackathon grants. And so right after they closed their first round of funding in November, I actually joined the team. So I was the first hire. So Shake and I were actually some of the earliest market makers and users of the product. So my background is in market making and trading. So I come from, the trading world, market making, a lot of algorithmic kind of stuff. And so I was one of the earliest liquidity providers on the platform, and I really loved what they were doing. So I was actually an investor in Tensor as well. So shortly after kind of, closing the round, they asked me, I was like, what if you came on to head up all of the trading side and we just kind of did our thing and just continued building out the product. So from there is kind of when I joined the team. And then from then we've kind of grown to the 5 people that we are today. So it's a slow and steady kind of grind, but we're slowly building the team out. We're still actively hiring engineers because we do need a lot of help on the technical side, but just because of what we have planned. But yeah, we're really excited to keep growing.
That's awesome.
So let's talk a little bit about like the market side of it. Tensor is considered to be like a pro trading marketplace. So for people who are actively trading NFTs, can you tell us a little bit about how like the pro trading aspect works of it and how it's different from other marketplaces?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the niches that we were able to identify early on, and part of the reason that we were able to find product market fit early. So again, part of why I was actually drawn to the platform myself is coming from my trading background. I was used to seeing things in a very exchange type manner, seeing limit orders, seeing market orders, seeing charts, seeing able to see the full depth of orders, right? And that's something that wasn't really present in NFTs prior to this. So prior to this, we like to describe it as an eBay style marketplace, right? Where you had sell orders, you had listings, you had bids on these, but you didn't really have an established buy side. You didn't really have a cohesive sell side. You just had these individual listing orders or auctions. And so that's how we like to think of NFTs before the AMM style or two-way sided liquidity and after that. So by introducing Tensor, introducing some of these market orders, some of these market making orders and some of the more liquidity kind of driving factors like the maker taker fee models, the pro trading kind of aggregation, how we display the order book, all of that kind of leans into kind of building liquidity on both sides of the book and then ultimately providing the tools for those traders to see it in those kind of ways that they're used to. So I think this is like a very like roundabout way of saying that we were able to create a product that a lot more sophisticated traders knew and what they were used to coming from, Binance or FTX or a Bybit or even E-Trade, right? Like this resembled a lot more of that style than it did just an eBay style marketplace.
Perfect. So I'm assuming you do have like a traditional stock market like trading background as well as like you mentioned Binance, so obviously crypto trading as well. So tell us a little bit, just to take a little side bracket about you. Where did you start your crypto journey? Like where did this trading adventure begin on the crypto side of things?
Yeah, so I've been trading about full time for about the past 7 years. So I got into crypto about late 2016, early 2017. At that point, I had been dabbling in the stock market and stuff before that, but never really consistently making money. I was just, calling myself a trader, but I wasn't really doing anything. So since 2017, I've pretty much been doing it full time. More recently at one of the larger crypto prop shops. So through my journey, I've kind of ridden, the ups and downs. I've been trading mostly perpetual futures and then got more into market making and algorithmic trading at the end there. So yeah, I've kind of had an experience kind of going through all of the different cycles in crypto, going through the bear markets, and then also seeing, the start of perpetual futures. So when I was at my prior firm, we were actually some of the first, liquidity providers to Binance Futures when they launched their futures products. So it was really cool kind of seeing the turn of the market and being able to be one of, the bigger traders in one of those markets, and just seeing how that evolved.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's definitely a really cool experience, and I can definitely relate as well. I've been trading for quite a few years now, and I love the game, and I love what you guys did with Tensor. Definitely, it's just like you said, it's what we're used to, and it's what we want to see. And it was clearly a niche that was missing in the Solana marketplace scene, and you guys killed it on that front. You definitely filled that niche, and I'm sure a lot of us are extremely happy with that.
Yeah, cheers.
Absolutely. Thank you. Hopping on to another point, what are some of the early challenges that the team faced, and what are some of the challenges that you're still facing, and how do you plan on tackling those challenges?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think like early on, like a lot of what we were trying to figure out is like, do we actually have product market fit? So when I joined the team, we had less than 4% market share, right? So still wasn't even a proven path that like what we were doing was actually successful or was actually going to be a decent business. And so I think that like one of the important things to note here is that we were able to correctly identify that over 50% of NFT volume happens by, less than 10 to 20% of traders, right? And this is the same thing that also happens in futures markets, in spot markets, all of that. So by basically able to identify that, the professional traders or the larger traders basically control over 50% of the whole market, we're able to say, okay, here, we need to cater to these people. And we literally went door to door, person to person. I was in DMs, Ilya was in DMs, Richard was in DMs, and we were getting on calls with every single person. And when they had feedback or they said, I hate this, or I like this, or I wish I had this, we added it, right? And so that was literally our earliest thing, was like, okay, how do we win over our first 10 users? How do we win over our first 100 users? And it was literally going door to door. And then you can kind of see, okay, well, getting to the next point is like, that's not really a scalable approach when you're trying to get to 10,000 from 10,000 to 100,000, right? Like I can only spend, how many hours, and Shay can only spend how many hours going, person to person. It's like, okay, how do we change our marketing strategy a little bit? How do we pivot? And how do we actually, provide people what they want and feel like they're being heard and still being able to give, back to the community? And so I think this is part of the challenge that we're finding now, is how do we still be flexible? How do we still push our agenda, do the things that we need to do while still catering to the community? And, there's a lot of requests. People want a lot of different things, but it's like, okay, we need to sift through that and figure out, okay, what's actually needs to be done, what's actually important, and what's actually just going to be like distracting for the site.
I think one of the biggest things that you guys do that a lot of other marketplaces throughout the whole crypto like community in general is that you guys actually listen to feedback. You receive it. I know that you acknowledge it because I've given some feedback, and some of the stuff I've given has been implemented. And I think you guys are doing that better than any other marketplace anywhere at the moment, I would say. And on that topic, let's talk about challenges that you faced, because that's a transition that we can go through here, because feedback obviously leads to challenges, and there's definitely some things there.
Yeah, definitely. So do you want to know just like challenges in general, like what we're kind of going up against right now, or like what have been the biggest roadblocks in the past?
All of that. Roadblocks in the past, roadblocks now. Let's just get those out of the way.
Yeah. So I think like one of the biggest things, like first and foremost, is like, is Solana going to be a big chain, right? Like that's one of the biggest questions that we always have, right? Or that always gets asked to us, especially by investors, because when we're in these meetings and we're asking, these investors for money, and we say, we have this vision. They're like, okay, so when are you going multi-chain, right? When are you going to an Arbitrum or an Ethereum or anything like that? And so I think like that's one of the biggest roadblocks that still is presently there, is like we are constantly fighting and trying to prove that this is a market that we believe that the only possible in Solana narrative is there. right? So I think that's part of, we can talk about this a little bit later, but that's part of the reason we did Tensorians is we wanted to create a community to push that forward, right? We need to create a community that says, okay, Tensor is here for that reason, that we want to push that narrative forward. And then from a technical point of view, right, we're also pushing compression forward with it and getting people to integrate that. And so it's like, that is always going to be one of the biggest roadblocks. And I don't think that's something that we're going to resolve tomorrow. But getting that narrative to shift, right? Just like in 2017 and 2018, you had the Bitcoiners who said Ethereum's never going to be anything, right? It's never going to be anything but just raising money for ICOs. And then it had that huge narrative shift where it's like, okay, shit, you can actually build things on it, right? Like we still need to see that happen with Solana just because of, there's been so many things in the past. But I think that's currently one of the biggest roadblocks, and that will be one of the biggest roadblocks going forward. It's not a technological thing. It's not a community thing. It's a narrative thing, right? Onboarding the rest of crypto to Solana, if you will. So I think that's like always going to be something that's there and something that we're always working towards. I think like things in the past, right? Like there's obviously been engineering problems. There's obviously been like, there's a whole host of worms that we're opening with the whole compression stuff right now, right? Because again, we're going through the whole, like basically going over from NFTs from scratch all over again, right? Trying to figure out the rough edges. Like you know this because you were going through it yourself.
Yep.
So it's like, those are the current things that we're going through. And yeah, they're going to be short-term rough and they're going to be a lot of pain points, but we think that like, if we're not the ones to do it, then it's going to just take a lot longer, right? So that's why we're willing to bite the bullet on both fronts. Like we're going to try to push on Ethereum. I'm going to try to push on the trading side, right? We're going to try to push compression forward. So I think those are some of the biggest roadblocks that we're trying to overcome right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were just talking about compression, which, of course, I'm a huge fan of it. So let's talk a little bit about that. You guys are the only marketplace, as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, that has done a compressed NFT marketplace.
That's actually not true anymore. So Elixir has actually launched their compressed NFT marketplace as of this week as well. So we've been chatting with them. A huge shout out to them. So yeah, we're no longer the only compressed marketplace, but we're the first. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. So yeah, I didn't know that until today.
It's always good to have competition because that just drives quality forward. So I think it's a win-win for everybody. I did read a tweet, I think it was last week. This might be wrong now, but I believe it was somewhere in between 10 and 25% of the entire NFTs minted on Solana are now CNFTs. So that means, well, now that Elixir has a marketplace as well, it's no longer the case, but you guys had 25% of the entire NFTs minted that could only be exclusively traded through Tensor. I think that is massive.
Yep.
How do you think that number is going to change over time? Do you think that from now on we're going to just see the vast majority of NFTs being compressed NFTs, or is not everybody shifting towards CNFTs just yet?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of pain points, right? Like there's obviously the standard arguments is, okay, there's not infrastructure, there's not all this tooling, you can't use all the existing protocols, but we're seeing that all change, right? Like we're seeing all the lending protocols integrate CNFTs now with Tensorians, right? We're seeing, the infrastructure around airdrops getting better. Like we were able to basically do a 90,000 CNFT airdrop in under 45 minutes, right? And we were able to do a second 10,000 batch in under 15 minutes. Like stuff like that is pretty crazy, right? And so we're starting to see the technology catch up. So that's one thing. And I think like the other thing is, another thing we were trying to prove with Tensorians, and Wombat, you did this as well with Faceless, is there's going to be different types of CNFTs that probably aren't the same things as NFTs. But that doesn't mean you can't do what we did with NFTs with compression as well, right? So we did a 10K collection. Wombat, you did a 350K collection, PFP collection, right? So like we're also proving that you can do just the same things that you did with NFTs with compression, but there's also a whole nother side of things that this unlocks, right? Whether it's short-term coupon codes, whether it's, zipping or unzipping NFTs almost instantly for a fraction of a penny, right? So there's a whole host of use cases that now become available with compression. And I'll just take like a little detour here. One of the ones that we did for our partnerships, shout out to Tamper Proof, is we actually took coupon codes, sealed them into compressed NFTs, and distributed them to people. And people were then able to take these codes, come to Tamper Proof's website and open them up and then redeem them for, regular Web 2 experience on Shopify or whatever. And they were able to get 10% off. Somebody actually just redeemed a free Saga phone yesterday. So it's like we're seeing some really cool stuff, and we're just trying to push things forward on every single end that we can.
Yeah, that's super impressive. And I think that generally when it comes to compressed NFTs, for me personally, I see them as, pretty much the future for Web 2 integrations. Like you said, there's a lot of people building things with compressed NFTs that are relating to Web 2. I think a lot of people say this, and as cliche as it sounds, they really are bridging the gap between Web 2 and Web 3 for everyone, really.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of really cool things that come out too, right? Like There's even people who are exploring like cookies. So like when you visit different websites, you perform different actions on a website, you could drop to compressed NFT. Or we're seeing like massive companies actually adopting compressed NFTs for marketing because it's cheaper to send a million compressed NFTs than it is to send out a million emails on MailChimp, right? So it's like this really unlocks like all of those things you wish NFTs could be, or you always tell someone like, yeah, NFTs could do this, but not quite yet, right? So it's like that's what I think personally this really kind of opens the door to, and we're just excited to see what comes from it. We don't necessarily know how they're going to trade or what they're going to look like, but we're going to be here to build tooling along the way and try to adapt our marketplace to fit that need.
Yep, exactly.
Absolutely. You did mention one of the pain points being, I'm not sure if this is necessarily a pain point, but the belief that Solana is gonna come out front, as Ethereum did back in the day. And I think a big part of that was just the how the infrastructure developed around and inside of Ethereum at that point in time. And I'm starting to see that in Solana right now. I see Tensor, I see Drip, and I see just a bunch of technology and companies that are just killing it, innovating. And how do you perceive Solana in the near future? Let's say 1 year time.
Yeah, I think, look, we've come a long way, but there's a lot that still needs to happen, right? Like DeFi needs to be more robust. It needs to actually have an ecosystem, because the only way that, and it may not be DeFi, it may be DePIN, it may be something else, right? But there needs to be more than one use case of Solana rather than just NFTs. And while I do think NFTs are still going to be here in a year or 2 years kind of thing, there needs to be other reasons to actually use this chain and have money kind of coming in and out. So I think that's one thing, right? I think the other thing is narrative. Like, it's all great and well to fight for, the couple $1 million that is Solana every day. And we can keep doing that. We can keep going to war against Magic Eden and Elixir and all these other marketplaces, right? But at the end of the day, like if we're ever going to get to an Ethereum size, like we need to be doing other things to onboard these people and understand why they're not here, right? And you see the common concerns of, the chain goes down. It was only by Alameda. It was all that kind of stuff. So it's like, why do we have that narrative and all the other chains don't, right? Or like, why is it so hard to dispel this narrative right now? And it shouldn't be. And we should be able to find ways to kind of onboard these users, whether it be through DeFi, whether it be through NFTs, right? Like, and that was part of the goal of Tensorians as well, was bring a lot of people over to Tensor who have never used Tensor before, have never heard of us before, right? And so that is going to continue to be one of the biggest challenges that we have started Tensor to do. And it's the same thing as we can't keep kicking down the road. It's like, somebody else will do it, or it's the foundation's job, or it's this person's job, or it's Austin Federa's job because he's the head of growth at Solana, right? Like, it's like, we all have to do this together, and it's going to be a mixture of 20 different protocols who are all here for the right reasons, who are all doing, airdrops or making their users feel a part of the community, right? And that's how stuff like Avalanche kind of forms, or ZK Sync, or like Arbitrum, and get those diehard communities. Like, we need that happening on Solana. And I know a lot of people are kind of jaded in the fact that they're there's a lot of volume, like this is where NFTs are, but like relatively Solana is not actually that used by the bigger players. If you look at, the bigger players that use crypto, the institutions, the market makers, the bigger firms, right? Like, they don't have a reason, or they've lost trust in Solana. And those are all things that are going to need to be there if we want to onboard 100,000 users, 1 million users, right? We need the institutions here. We need the bigger players here alongside retail. It's not just one or the other.
I agree with that 100%. And yeah, you do mention NFTs for Solana a lot, and I completely understand that, and I understand that we're not at the point where we want to be, maybe. But for me personally, I think what onboarded me to Solana was payment processing at its finest. Well, I was a pretty big Ethereum user prior to finding out about Solana, and there's definitely some aggregators that allow you to track your spending on Ethereum wallets. I'm pretty sure you're aware. And it was, man, once I hooked that up, it was crazy. I was spending so much money on gas fees, just regular transactions. And it was just a waste of money. And one of my close friends, he's like, hey, man, I need you to check this out. He pulls up his phone or a computer. I can't really remember. And I think he sent 2 cents from one wallet to another wallet. And I just saw the money fly by like instantly. And the 2 cents were there, no fees, no nothing. I'm like, dude, this is insane. Yeah. At that moment, I'm like, this is the technology that onboards me into a chain more than the NFT side, because honestly, there wasn't even an NFT scene back then.
Yep.
But I think there could definitely be some expansion on that, as well as DeFi, like you mentioned, definitely has a lot of room to grow. But what are the plans going forward for Tensor and Tensorians as well?
So I think like obviously we have an NFT project now alongside a marketplace that we're trying to build out, right? So it's like a lot of the things that we're going to be building and we're doing for the first time is like we're feeling what NFT projects go through every single time they launch a project, right? We put ourselves in that shoes in those shoes intentionally. So it's like, okay, well, we need to figure out holder verification for CNFTs, right? Like we talked to you about that one about like, okay, how do we do this? We need to figure out sales bots for CNFTs, like all of the stuff that we take for granted that's already there, right? So that's the first thing is get the Tensorians up to par and past what a normal NFT collection would be, because we don't just do things the way that other people do them, right? We do them with the Tensor twist and we make sure it's a good UX. And so that's the first thing, right? Is just establish all the basic stuff there. Make sure all of the NFT pipelines, make sure all of the boring stuff, the data, all of that kind of stuff is actually good. After that, if you think about, how we did our job, right? The reason we didn't just use other people's tooling and just like smash it together. We built everything from scratch, right? We built a whole airdrop mechanic from scratch. We built a whole minting mechanism from scratch, the whole user experience. And it was pretty smooth, right? Like anybody who went through that said it was like fairly seamless and it didn't feel like a Web3 kind of minting experience. Now, what happens when we onboard other creators to that experience, right? And we can do that over and over and over again, right? So it's like everything that we're doing for a purpose. We're testing it on ourselves. We're making sure that we can do this flawlessly before we put somebody else's kind of like their worth or their kind of livelihood on the line, right? So that's kind of the first way that we look at this. And I think that there's a lot of other things that excite us about, XNFTs and compression and even mobile, right? Like there's a lot of other things that we see Tensor kind of being, and it's not purely just a pro trading product, right? We want to lean into the creator side. We want to lean into the compression side. We want to show people that like Tensor can be more of that. And it is actually an all-encompassing app where you can come and do everything that you need for an NFT, right? You can use it to send, bulk send. You can use it to kind of do whatever. You can use it to do your minting, right? So that's what Tensor is going to become ultimately, is an all-in-one kind of NFT encompassing thing. And if other people want to build stuff on top of Tensor, if they just want to use our contracts and access the liquidity, great, right? You can build whatever you want on top of Tensor. We're not gating the API. We're not gating the contracts. And so ultimately, we're going to have an all-encompassing NFT experience, but we're also encouraging other people to tap into that liquidity, build other experiences on top of us, right? That's how we create sticky liquidity. That's the future for Tensor. And so alongside that, right, as we're doing partner drops, as we're doing all of these things, as we're doing all these promotions, Tensorians are going to be front and center, right? If you think about like airline loyalty, all of that, when you fly an airline enough, when you perform enough, when you go shopping at a restaurant or go eat at a restaurant enough or go shopping at a shop enough, you get status and you start getting free things. You start getting these rewards, or you get disproportionately rewarded to someone who doesn't have that status, right? And that's what Tensorians is all about, is we have this marketplace. We're creating this amount of value. How do we give back to those users who believe in us? And so if you support Tensorians, if you rep your Tensorian, yeah, we're going to treat you like a first class kind of, like you're flying an airline.
Awesome. So on the topic of loyalty, you mentioned loyalty and, onboarding new users previously. So I think one of the things I find most genius about Tensor in general is the loyalty aspect of it, like the loyalty percentage and the partner rewards. So let's talk about that for a second. Like what is the thinking behind those, and how are those going to look going forward?
Yeah. So I guess a little bit of alpha here is we are doing a season 3, right? So season 3 has already started. You can earn points just by trading the same way as season 2. We will be taking some action to kind of tweak the formula and just kind of make some adjustments based on what we've seen. But yeah, overarching, the loyalty basically works on if you have listings on other marketplaces versus ours, and, how you basically interact with the website. So depending on where you list, how you list all of that, that'll change, the rarity of the boxes that you end up with at the end of the season. So this is basically our way of gamifying the experience. It's like, okay, well, you can list here or you can list there, right? But we can make it a little bit more fun. We can make people feel involved. And so that's something that we want to bring to the Tensorians as well, right? Like, yeah, we're going to do staking, but it's not just going to be staking like everyone else does it, right? Like, and this is what I mean with the Tensor twist is like, we want to make a polished UX and we want to change or redefine what NFTs or what utility is going to be for these NFTs, right? So I think that's like one thing. So I guess this is just a roundabout way of saying that like having a Tensorian is going to be key to kind of, getting your kind of bonuses and boosts in season 3. But yeah, we are ultimately planning on keeping decentralized Tensor through season 3 and perpetually forward, right? So there's going to be more farming. There's going to be more kind of rewards. We're going to partner with more projects like CanPy and things like that to provide, value for our holders. And so I think like, at the end of the day, we still do run a profitable marketplace. We have a lot to offer to these projects. And yeah, that's just the kind of crux of it. We don't have to kind of just pull a lot of like smoke and mirrors to kind of provide value for these things.
So would it be fair to say, and you don't have to answer this if you don't have to, if you don't want to, but so if you own a Tensorian and you are showing loyalty, does that affect the rarity of the boxes that you're getting at all?
Yep. Yeah. So it is actually, if you hover the loyalty score, it does actually tell you. So depending on where you list what marketplace, at the end of the season, it'll take like a time weighted average of, this is how much your loyalty was over the season, and this affects the rarity of your boxes. So the number of boxes will be determined by the amount of points, and then the rarity of your box will be determined by the loyalty score.
Does the ownership of the NFT affect the like the ownership of a Tensorian affect the rarity at all?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it directly affects the rarity at all, but I would say there's a little twist. This is the little alpha leak here, is that if you have a Tensorian, it might give you a little advantage in season 3.
It's great.
Perfect.
So let's pivot over to just generally. I know all of these things kind of encompass this, but let's talk about like your marketing strategy. Like, what have you done so far with Tensor? Because I mean, you practically overtook the NFT marketplace scene by storm, right? You rose to the top. So, what was your strategy going into it? How did you accomplish this? Let's just hear that.
Yeah, so I think like, the big thing here is that there's no big marketing team behind this, right? It's literally just Shake and I and Ilya and Richard, and we just sit down and we just, we come up with this stuff and we just try to put together like something that we would want to see out of a marketplace, right? Like being a trader for so long, interacting with these marketplaces for so long, it's like, okay, what would I would want it to see if I was in, on the other side of this? And so I think like that's just what we try to think about every single time we make an announcement, every time we try to go forward. We don't charge for marketing. We don't charge for partnerships, right? We don't make people sign exclusive deals. We basically want to go at this and basically say, okay, like we provide the best experience. We provide the best product. And that's why you should be in partnership with us, right? And we're not going to gouge you left and right to put out a tweet or to do a spaces or anything like that. So it's like, we're here to support builders for the right reasons. And they hopefully support us. And that seems to have worked, right? So it's like, we've been able to, close a lot of the bigger partnerships and just, have good relationships with these projects just by, saying, hey, we're going to support you guys no matter what. And we hope that, you're here for the right reasons, just like we are, and we can work together. So I think like a lot of integrity and just honestly, there's no big kind of secret into like what we're doing or all of that. And obviously incentives had a big role as well, right? Like putting together a strong incentive program and thinking about, the different game theory behind it has obviously helped us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So another question I have here is, I understand that Tensorians were, I mean, in my opinion, Tensorians were a massive use case. One of the biggest use cases for NFTs in general, I think, is marketing. So is that one of the reasons that you guys took into account as to why Tensorians?
I would say there's 3 big reasons to why we did Tensorians. And the first one is community, right? Was to actually give our community something tangible that they can rep and say, hey, I rep Tensor. I believe in Tensor. I think what they're doing is good, right? Because otherwise we can give them money. We can give them free stuff that they're just going to dump and move on to the next marketplace. But there are these diehard fans who say, yes, we believe in the team and we believe that this is what they're doing is good. So that's the first reason. I think the second reason is compression, right? We've kind of talked about that ad nauseum already, but like pushing the tech forward, right? And third is marketing, right? Getting the awareness out there, actually trying this for ourselves, right? Onboarding people and saying, okay, what is Tensor? What are they doing? Why are they cool, right? So I think those are the 3 big things of like why we actually did this and why we did it in the way that we did with Tensorians. Why did we do, 100,000 shards collection, right? It created a lot more distribution. It created a lot more awareness for people to come around. Like, okay, there's a market that I can trade that I can just jump into. And not all of these whales who have been farming, we're just going to mint 100 or 200 or 300 Tensorians, right? Gave them a way to distribute this amongst more people. So ultimately, almost every step that we did was keeping that in mind.
Of course, and there's definitely power in having a vast group of people rocking your PFPs. By the way, I think they look amazing. I know there was some FUD at first. I'm honestly not sure why. I think that I'm a huge fan of pixel art. Wombat, I mean, he's, I think, the biggest fan of pixel art.
Yep. I'm a big fan of Faceless as well. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I always laugh about in the office with the guys. It's like, it looks terrible under Tensor, and as it kind of goes up, it just looks better and better and better.
Exactly. Yep.
But yeah, it's one of those memes.
Until it achieves blue chip status, it's going to look the best. So on that topic, let's talk about the art and the direction on there. I'm not sure how much involvement you had on this, but could you tell us a little bit about the artist? And we know Zenom did the artwork, but could you tell us a little bit about him and what his process was, as far as for the collection?
Yeah, so this is probably one of the biggest things like I wasn't involved in whatsoever because I am not the creative person on the team. As much as I do marketing and all of that, I'm not creative. So this was really like Zenom and Ilya's child. And they did like 7 or 8 different versions of this collection over, the span of 8 months. I think before I even joined the team, they had finished like the first version of the art. And so, yeah, it's been a massive work in progress. And I know this is one of Xenom's bigger projects. He does a lot of art in Solana, and he's one of the top Solana pixel artists. But I know this is like a really big, like, project of his. So yeah, unfortunately, I can't give you too much insight on the art of it. But like, I would say like the week before, oh man, each one of us went through all 10,000 images, like 6 or 7 nights in a row, just painstakingly trying to make sure there was no pixels off, making sure every single one looked good. And it was just like all of us, I think by the end of it, had looked through those images so many times, we were just like seeing them everywhere. It was just like one of those kind of things.
Yeah, I think that the art was absolutely spectacular. I think me personally, I know that there's challenges that are faced, especially when it's such a low pixel resolution, but I think Xenom killed it and it looks spectacular.
Yeah, I'd love to hear like what your thoughts are, because like obviously you did your faceless collection with a similar kind of style.
Yeah, so I did mine in 32 by 32, which is slightly bigger than yours, I believe. I think yours is 24 by 24. I'm eyeing that, but
yep, it is. Yep.
There we go. Perfect. So I usually, before I started doing 32 by 32, I used to be mainly focused on 24 by 24. And that was, it was a challenge, really. It's hard to, do things on that, especially because you don't have enough canvas space to really make like outlines or things that, make the art like pop. But that's where you really have to focus on like color and all of those things. And I think the Tensorian collection just absolutely nails that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So really quickly, while we're on this topic, let's also talk about like the 4 like different classes, I guess. There are like the mages, the reapers. What was the other one? The
Raiders.
Raiders, exactly.
And then the androids.
Yep, exactly. Perfect.
Yeah.
So what was the thought process behind that? Oh, and which one is your favorite? I'm dying to know.
So I think I'm obviously partial to the mages because that's my PFP. But yeah, so I think like this was a really cool idea by Xenom that he had. It was like, okay, why don't we put 4 different factions into the collection? And you can really get people to vibe with what they like, right? So it's like each one has a little lore, like, some of them are the ship posters, some of them are like the TA kind of guys, some of them are the algo kind of guys, some of them are just like buy and hold kind of guys, right? And so it's like everyone kind of has something they can vibe with, whether it's the lore, whether it's the art style, whether it's just like the actual like android or like being a reaper. Like some people just really like reapers is what we saw, right? And so I think it just gave a little like fun twist to the collection that we hadn't really seen before. Maybe there's a few other people that had done it, but we thought like this was a cool way to add a little spice to the collection. And we don't really know if we're going to give like utility to collecting one of each faction per se, but like it does add that kind of possibility into the future as well, right? So it adds a lot of cool gamification elements.
Yeah, for sure. I think of it as like belonging to something. I think Clay's Tours had a great job when they did this with the different like types of dinosaurs 100%. And people started, banding together basically to each class, I would say. And I think that just makes it a lot better in terms of the collection. I think it's a super smart move. And so I think you already said this, but your favorite is mages, correct?
Yeah.
I have a mage. I'm loving
Let's
those.
Go. Yeah, those are the traders. So I feel like I had to rep one of those.
Yeah, let's go.
But no, it's been pretty awesome to see people kind of like, they usually pick one faction and they're just like die hard for that faction. And it's been really cool to see that because even between the team, we all have kind of like our favorites and everyone's picked kind of one. So it's been really awesome to see, okay, like, yeah, this is my childhood or this is why I like this, or, everyone has a story.
So speaking of the team, can you tell us a little bit about like the other team members, like what their jobs are and how that thing goes?
Definitely. Yeah. So I can start from the top. So Ilya is the CEO in the front end. So he basically does anything and everything related to UI design and like everything else the CEO does, right? So this is like kind of the one thing that impressed me when I joined the team, is especially when there was only 3 of us. It was literally Richard, me, and Ilya. And so Richard is the CTO and he does everything back end. But between the 2 of them, they basically built a whole business. We're in the Discord, talking to customers, answering support tickets. They were doing arrays. They were doing the legal stuff, right? So it was pretty insane to just see 2 people who slept like 6 hours a night and who just did literally everything and anything that a whole startup was doing, right? Including the business and marketing and all of that before Shake and I joined. But I think like that's pretty commendable to kind of see, right? And that was just one of the things that like I never thought I'd be working for someone. And when I saw that, I was like, holy shit, like I want to be a part of this. And so I think that's a big part of the reason that Shake and I joined the team as well. But yeah, so like Ilya basically does everything design, everything front end. And he's a self-taught engineer. So he basically 3 years ago, he didn't know how to code, started from scratch. He built one of the most used staking platforms on Solana right now called Gem Farm. So he's come a long way and he's made a name for himself. And then Richard is actually a quant kind of high frequency trading developer. So he was working at 2 Sigma before this and he joined Solana about a year ago. And so he does everything and anything relating to data, backend. He's pretty much the genius behind Tensor, like data wise. And then we have Avocado, who's one of our newer developers. He is just out of this world. He's built a couple other protocols on Solana as well, but he basically is working on a creator product right now and working on a few other things like bells and whistles for Tensor. And then obviously you have myself and Shake on the business side. So I've talked about myself, but Shake basically, he started Cyber Samurai and he basically heads up everything marketing, partnerships, new launches, all of that good stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much the whole team.
Yeah, that's great. So there's basically something for everyone, right?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the unique things about our team is that like we all have a very, very different background and experience.
Oh, I was gonna say now that the team's a little bit bigger, I hope you're all getting a little bit more sleep, you know?
Definitely not this week.
Definitely not this week. No, but honestly, it's still impressive that they were able to get 6 hours of sleep while doing everything. I think that
Yep.
by itself just talks about their efficiency and their commitment. That's amazing, man, honestly.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive to see them literally answering support tickets and not just delegating that to the mods, right? Because like I think that was one of the biggest things for us is like them seeing the users' pain points firsthand and literally being in the Discord being like, okay, yeah, we need to fix this. Like this can't wait another week kind of thing, right? So I think like just them being grounded actually made a huge difference.
And in terms of new team members, are you guys still looking for team members? What's kind of going
Definitely.
on that side?
Yeah, so I think we're always hiring on the engineering side for sure. It's just hard to find people who are dedicated and want to put in the time. Because obviously we all work pretty long hours and pretty heavy. And there's kind of a meme about that on Twitter of Ilya kind of saying, you know, if you don't work on the weekends, like what are you doing kind of thing. And so yeah, it's just one of those things. So we're always hiring engineers, but yeah, it's not an easy job.
Yeah, I can tell.
And what would you say is the team's motivation behind everything? Is there like obviously a monetary factor, but is it like a passion project as well, or what is the driving force behind the team?
I think you actually hit the nail on the head there. So Shake and I were actually talking about this earlier in the office today. And, you know, it's actually really special to see when you have 5 people who are not just like, yeah, we obviously have salaries. Yeah, we're paid, but we all actually have a vested interest in making something special here, right? Like actually being one of the bigger projects on Solana, breaking that narrative that we were talking about open, right? So it's like we all almost feel like we have a stake here that's bigger than just us getting paid or bigger than if Tensor is successful. It's like we actually have a chance at shaping not only how NFTs are traded, but how Solana is viewed as a whole. So I think that's a really big driving factor in how we do things. And then also like, you know, having a direct impact on how these things trade, how the market evolves, right? Like for me personally, I was always on the other side of like, okay, if I could do this, or if I had that chance, I would do this differently, or I think I would do this better, right? And so this is my chance to prove that, right? Like, okay, now that I'm the one who's guiding these markets, I can actually control the liquidity, how this stuff is structured, what is actually important, how do I make these decisions? So it's like, I think it is more than just, you know, the salary at the end of the day or just the equity or whatever it is. It's, you know, you actually have a chance to leave your mark on this for better or for worse.
Yeah, and I think that's extremely important. Once there's passion and you've been on the other side of the coin and you know what you want, you know what to expect, it definitely makes the experience better for everybody. And I think it's obvious at this point that you guys are absolutely killing it. I'm super excited to see what you're going to do from this point forward. I know that innovation and just bringing those things that we're missing, like you've done that perfectly, and I'm sure you're going to keep on doing that.
Appreciate that. And I think like the biggest thing here is just building something that we would want to use ourselves, right? Like I'm probably the most critical, or I hound Richard and Ilya so much about the little things that I wish I had, or I wish I had this, or this is wrong. And at the end of the day, it's just because like I want the best product for myself, and that's what we want for customers as well, right? It's like I'm not just building something for other people to use. It's like I'm using this thing day in and day out, right? Like I'm flipping these things back and forth.
Yeah, and I think that also goes to the point of like compressed NFTs and the new tech. When you have that perspective of what you want, and it's not readily available, and you're the one who builds it, I think that's a great perspective to be on, especially when building this new tech for CNFTs.
Yep, definitely. And again, like it's one thing to just build it and put it out there, but it's like I'm like one of the top 10 largest holders of the Faceless just because I wanted that experience. I wanted to see what everyone else is doing, right? Like Shake has collected so many Dialect sticker packs because we want to see what the hype is around, right? Like we want to be in there like, okay, yeah, this sucks. We need to make this better. And so it's like we want to build stuff and we want to use it ourselves too, right? Because we just want to create really cool shit and push this forward.
On that note, like who would you say are the key players that kind of influenced you and the team, and like who do you look up to? Because I'm pretty sure everybody looks up to you guys now, so it will be fun to know who are you looking up to.
Oh, that's an honor. Yeah, no, that's an honor. I think like, all the infrastructure providers on Solana, right? Like the guys like Helios, the guys like Triton, like all of those guys, like I have a newfound appreciation for how much those guys actually do for the network and like where we would be without them, right? So I think like that and then like Toli and Raj and all of that as well, like they do a great job of, not getting caught up in the whole like Ponzi liquidity kind of that kind of game when everyone's kind of pushing them to kind of do that. And we've seen this turn out for the better in the sense like the developer hackathons, the developer environment, all of the stuff we've kind of seen of Solana is all a fruit of that labor and how they've kind of pushed that not just onto themselves. So I think it's kind of like the opposite side there, but they've done a good job of almost decentralizing that for an engineering or better kind of way. So I think like, yeah, those are some people that I really look up to. It's like, people who are doing this for the right reason, who have kind of paved the way for, teams like us to kind of try things, break glass. And yeah, they're going to be there to answer some questions when we're there or when we run into some difficulty.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. I think we all agree on that answer.
Absolutely. So really quickly before we wrap this up, I've got two questions for you. The first of which is, you mentioned you guys had an office. So are you guys working like physically in a location, or how's that situation looking?
Yeah, so our whole engineering team is out of Toronto, actually. So we have an office in Toronto. And so Shake and I are both remote, but we fly in for the big sprints. So like when we're planning Tensorians, when we're doing kind of big drops, big product releases for the actual mint day, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, when we do the big sprints, it's good to be in person because, there's always like little things that we're running back and forth about.
That's great. Yep. It's always good to be in person because you get to have more personal connections with team members. And I think that leads to a better working environment in general.
Definitely.
On that note, are you planning on doing any community events in person anytime soon?
So I think we actually have something really cool planned for Breakpoint. It's not an event per se, but yeah, we're planning something pretty cool for a little product release. Maybe a Tensorian will help, maybe it won't. But yeah, if you're at Breakpoint, try to find us and make sure you have your phone with you.
Oh, okay. So that's a little bit of
That's
alpha
some
right
alpha
there.
right there, yeah.
That's a good question. All right. So the last question I have for you is, who would win in the upcoming fight between Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg?
Oh man, I think I gotta take Zuck. Like, have you seen how he trains, man? Like,
I think
I
he's
feel like
won
he's a
some like
monster.
jujitsu or some taekwondo tournaments or something. So I think
Yeah,
I'd have to agree with you on that one.
I feel like he's just like not gonna blink and he's just gonna like pull out some crazy shit. But like, I don't know, Elon probably has something up his sleeve too. So
Yeah,
I
for
feel like I
sure, for
can't count
sure.
him out.
But we'll see, we'll see. But
Yeah,
yeah,
who do you have? You have Zuck as well?
Zuck. Yep. Wookie, who are you
Yeah, I
rooting
got my
for?
money on Sock as well. Elon's a big guy, but I still
Oh
got my
no, so we're all
suspicions
rooting
that.
against Elon, huh?
Oh, I actually
This
want
is where we're
Elon
gonna
to
get
win, but I
canceled.
mean, Sock's a robot, man.
Our accounts are
That's
about to
too
get
funny.
suspended on X.
Right? Yeah, I guess I should watch what I say. Jeez.
Yep. But yeah, that's pretty much all we had for you today. So, like I said, if there's anything else you want to mention, feel free to do so. But if not, we'll go ahead and wrap this up.
Awesome. No, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you so much for your time. And I think that wraps up episode 1. And it couldn't have gone any better. It's honestly an honor, and can't wait to see what you guys are doing from this point on.
Awesome.
Yep,
Have a good
exactly.
weekend, guys. I
You
appreciate it.
too. Appreciate you.
Likewise, take it easy.